Did you know that the average number of years spent in retirement has more than doubled over the past 50 years? The average lifespan has increased from 71 years in 1970 to 77 years in 2022, and reports say it continues to rise. More data from the Population Division of the United Nations shows that there were 89,000 centenarians living in the United States in 2021, nearly twice as many as there were just 20 years ago. But the age at which we retired has remained relatively constant, still around 65 years of age. Medical advancements during this time have reshaped our understanding of health and aging, letting us live longer and healthier lives. It's an incredible gift, more time with loved ones and friends while embracing all the big and small treasures this world offers. But the possibility of more years also raises the question, will your retirement savings go the distance? Hi, I'm Keith Demetriades, and today we'll talk about two major factors that will undoubtedly impact a lengthy retirement, how they can affect your finances, and how you can help future-proof your retirement. Think of it like planning for an extended trip. If you pack your bag the right way, you're prepared for just about anything. Traditional retirement planning typically assumes a lifespan of 20 to 25 years post-retirement. This might have been sufficient decades ago. But with people living into their 90s and beyond, these outdated models can leave retirees unprepared. Imagine retiring at 65 only to live another 35 years instead of 20. That's 15 years of unanticipated expenses. The longer you live, the greater the risk of outliving your savings, and the risk is especially pronounced if you rely on fixed income sources like pensions, Social Security, or annuities, because they might not keep pace with inflation, rising healthcare costs, or unexpected life events. When your savings run dry, financial independence fades, and your quality of life could drastically diminish at a time when you need it the most. Healthcare, for example, becomes one of the largest and fastest growing expenses as we age. More frequent doctor visits, expensive medications, treatments, and hospital stays can all contribute to an ever-increasing financial burden. While we may not want to think about the possibility of declining health, we probably should consider how it might look. First, you may need help at home with things like meal prep, housekeeping, or even managing your medications or paying some bills. Over time, that may develop into needing assistance with personal care, leading to part-time or full-time in-home professional health care. Eventually, your needs may escalate to a point where assisted living or even nursing home care becomes necessary. Many people don't realize that a person turning 65 today has a nearly 70% chance of needing some form of care in their remaining years. And this care can last several years. Even those who prefer to stay in their homes can spend tens of thousands of dollars per year on needed services. So it's really not a matter of whether you'll need care, but when. Long-term care in particular is a significant concern. Nursing homes, assisted living, and home health care come with steep price tags. A private room in a nursing home can cost upwards of $100,000 per year, depending on the type of care, the services provided, and your geographic location. Even in-home care, which is often sought first before full-time care is needed, can run $50,000 annually for part-time assistance. These are real costs, and they're on the rise. So without a plan, they can wipe out your retirement savings much faster than expected. And statistically speaking, there's a high probability that you'll need long-term care at some point due to illness, disability, or aging. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the HHS, estimates that over half, 56% of Americans turning 65 today will develop a disability serious enough to require long-term services and support. The HHS also estimates that from 2020 to 2065, the number of individuals with significant disabilities is expected to more than double. Here's the reality. Not having a long-term care plan is still a plan. It's just a bad one. So let's talk about the four main options when it comes to long-term care planning. To make an informed decision, I suggest weighing the pros and the cons of each option in context to your specific circumstances, your unique financial situation, asset allocation, your risk tolerance, long-term care costs, insurance costs, life expectancy, your health history, and family dynamics are all important factors to consider. The first option is self-insuring. which means relying entirely on your savings or your assets to cover potential long-term care costs. This option may be best suited to those with significant resources, a higher risk tolerance, and a comprehensive financial plan designed to self-fund effectively. I say this because the potential costs of long-term care are unpredictable, and this option can be especially risky if you live longer than expected and/or require more intensive care. Draining your savings faster than anticipated could leave you financially vulnerable, so be careful. As a second option, you might plan to rely on family members, such as a spouse, children, or close relatives, to provide care as you age. Although this is a loving premise, the reality is that the emotional and logistical burden of this plan can be a huge ask. When considering this possibility, the details should be carefully considered, agreed upon, and reviewed periodically with all parties involved before care is actually even needed. I also recommend having in-depth conversations with potential caregivers and providing written instructions that detail your wishes. Remember, caring for an aging loved one requires the caregiver to have first the willingness, and then the time, the energy, the financial resources, the ability to track medications, and proper legal directives in place. And finally, the caregiver needs to have both a physical and an emotional support system in place for this method to be sustainable and effective. Family care can be the right option for some situations, but I can't overemphasize it enough, the need for planning and communication. A third option is using insurance to bridge the gap for potential long-term care costs. There are two primary ways to leverage insurance. You can either purchase a traditional long-term care insurance policy or a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider, also known as a hybrid policy. The traditional long-term care policy is similar to buying auto or home insurance. You pay premiums to keep the policy current and make claims as needed. There is a caveat, however. Although these premiums are usually lower than premiums for a hybrid policy, they are a use it or lose it policy. If you never make a claim, you lose your premiums. You should also be aware that the premiums on these policies can and do rise over time. A hybrid insurance policy allows you to tap into your policy's death benefit while you're living to help cover long-term care costs. It can also pay out as a death benefit, provided money's left over. Either way, the policy pays out. That's a bonus. The advantage of this dual-purpose option is that it provides coverage when needed. It's a flexible and increasingly popular option for long-term care planning. Keep in mind, though, that this guaranteed payout, one way or another, you get the benefit, costs you. Hybrid policies are more expensive than traditional long-term care, and the life insurance payouts are more modest. Either of these insurance options can be the right choice, but I'd recommend you conduct a careful examination of not only the costs, but the benefits for your particular situation. Finally, Medicaid can be a good option for long-term care benefits if you have low income and/or resources or need services beyond what your family can provide. One thing to remember, in most cases, you must deplete almost all your assets to qualify for Medicaid coverage. Additionally, not all facilities accept Medicaid patients, so it does limit your facility options. And since we always want to keep all our options open as much as possible, let's talk about another threat to your retirement savings that very few people consider: inflation. Over time, inflation erodes the purchasing power of your money, meaning that what you can buy with your savings today will likely cost much more in 10 or 20 years. This can be especially relevant in the case of a lengthy retirement, where inflation has an extended impact. Even a relatively low inflation rate can substantially reduce the value of your savings over the course of your retirement. Think of it this way. The average annual inflation rate over the past 30 years has been about 2.5%. While 2.5% might seem modest, it compounds over time. For example, if you had $1 million today and experienced an inflation rate of 2.5% annually, in just 20 years, that same $1 million would only have the purchasing power of about $600,000. In other words, you'd lose almost 40% of your purchasing power over those 20 years due to the cost of all those goods and services increasing due to inflation. If you fail to account for inflation in your retirement plan, you might find yourself in a situation where your savings aren't enough to cover basic living expenses. Things like healthcare costs, groceries, housing, all these prices rise over time. It's not an option to eliminate these expenditures. So your plan should include strategies to offset increasing costs. Let's take a minute and review. When planning for your retirement, it's no longer enough to assume a 20-year time horizon. As life expectancy increases, your retirement planning horizon should extend to 25 years or even more. It's smart to plan for the possibility that you'll live well into your 90s. And to realize this extra time in retirement will lead to noticeable increases in your cost of living. So what's the solution? Spoiler alert, the answer is not just to save more. You should also consider building flexibility and cushion into your plan to account for the unexpected. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, and you need to be able to handle whatever comes your way in retirement, whether it's market fluctuations, rising healthcare costs, or simply all the other financial expenses that come with longevity. Here's how to make sure your plan can adapt as life changes. First off, diversifying your investments is crucial. It's a classic strategy for managing risk. By balancing your portfolio across stocks, bonds, and other investments like Treasury inflation protected securities, you'll help protect yourself against volatility while hedging against inflation's erosion of your purchasing power. For example, stocks may offer long-term growth while bonds, real estate, and tips stabilize your account and are a hedge against inflation. Your withdrawal strategy also plays a huge role in making your money last. A rigid withdrawal plan will make matters worse. When the market experiences a normal dip, pullback, or even a correction, this is also true if unexpected expenses arise. With this in mind, consider a dynamic withdrawal strategy. This means you might withdraw a little more in good years and scale back to help preserve your savings in lean years. I also suggest planning for multiple scenarios. Life rarely follows a straight path. So what happens if you live longer than expected? What if healthcare costs rise faster than anticipated? Or how would a major market downturn affect your retirement savings? You can stress test your financial plan and adjust as needed by running various scenarios. I can't recommend this enough. It's a good idea, not only for the preparation, but for the peace of mind. You might also consider having a healthy emergency fund. Whether it's unexpected medical bills, home repair, or a sudden family need, having liquid cash on hand can be a financial lifesaver. Let's also touch back on the idea of making sure you have a long-term care plan. Again, I know no one likes to think about needing long-term care or having a plan for it, but it's something to really consider. Having a plan helps ensure you won't drain your retirement accounts to cover potentially enormous expenses. And finally, remember that retirement age isn't set in stone. You don't have to retire at 65 just because that's the norm. You pick your finish line. If working a few more years is fulfilling and gives you purpose, while at the same time boosting your savings and increasing your Social Security benefits, it might make sense to push back your retirement date. Maybe it's working part-time or finding new work that revitalizes and still provides purpose. Having some flexibility can give your financial plan a longer runway to grow and mature. Now that we've mapped out what longevity could mean for you and your financial future, I encourage you to ask yourself, have I packed enough to be sure I'm prepared for the long trip ahead? I'm Keith Demetriades. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you found this discussion helpful, and if you have, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, like, and share with others who might find this valuable information helpful. Be a savvy steward and make your life count.